If you're a sports fan, or even if you're not, if you just like good writing, Mark Whicker's your guy. He's been covering the SoCal sports scene for more than a quarter century. Super Bowls, World Series, Kentucky Derbies. Whicker's been there. He talks to the unsung heroes too, like high school coaches and club fighters. And he can talk big business. The Angels versus Anaheim, NFL teams moving back, even a $5 billion Olympics bid. So much to discuss, so let's do it. Mark Whicker, he's next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Memorial Care is transforming the way healthcare is delivered, keeping our communities and businesses healthy by guiding them on the path to wellness with easily accessible hospitals, physician offices, and outpatient centers. Memorial Care, leading the way.
Hi, I'm Rick Reiff, and I'm talking with Mark Whicker. So, Mark, when I, talk about, I'd like to mention you've covered a few big events. What have you covered? Here's what you emailed me: 9 Olympics, several World Series, Final Fours, Super Bowls, 31 Masters, U.S. Opens, Ryder Cups, NBA Finals, many boxing championships, a couple of Indy 500s, Stanley Cups. You were here for the Angels and Ducks championships, along with Lakers and Kings, USC football, and UCLA hoops 1995. Okay, so does it ever get tiring?
No, it's the great part about this particular job is that every day is different. And I might be at a Laker game one night, and I might be at an Angels function the next night and commenting on something else that happened in the world of sports. I mean, there's one of the great things about living here is you have so many franchises and you have so many fans, and there's a lot of history involved in most of the franchises here, and there's just a real wealth of things to cover, and that's different. I've worked in places where you do wake up in the morning and wonder what's going on today and what can you write about, and you never have that problem in greater Los Angeles.
Yeah, do you ever wonder, wow, pinch me, here I am, I'm at the Super Bowl.
Well, I think once you're there for a while, it's not the glamorous life that a lot of people thought. I mean, we don't go into it for that. I mean, we're there a long time after everybody's gone, and we're there a long time before anybody gets there. And logistically, especially a big event like that, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes. But I never really lose sight of the fact that I get to do a lot of things that a lot of people would like to do.
Yeah. What's your favorite story of all time?
The favorite story that I've written?
Yeah.
I think that in 2008, when I was at the Register before, President Obama was running for the first time, and I realized that once we got into it that he had a chance to win, and I was trying to think, how do you tie this into sports? Who would be a good person to talk to who can relate to the importance of this, the first African-American president? And I got an appointment with Kareem Abdul Jabbar the week before the election, and went to his office in Long Beach, and we talked about his dad, who grew up in the South, and he was saying, I wish my dad was alive to see this if it happens. And he grew up in the 60s, so he knew what discrimination was like, and that was a very turbulent time. He grew up in Harlem in New York. And so I wrote that, and he had a lot of good stuff to say. The only trick was, now Obama has to win, because I wanted to write it on Wednesday morning. So if he did win, you have Obama wins on the front page, and then you flip to sports, and this is what Kareem Abdul says about what just happened. But he's got to win, and he's got to win early enough in the evening to where we can make it for deadline. And so I had another very mundane column ready in case he didn't win. But as it turned out, we knew he won by about 7 p.m., so we were able to run it. And that's just one of the, it had nothing to do with politics. It's just, here's the thing where you visualize it, how's it going to work? And it worked out. And I had a good feeling about the way that all fell together.
Of course, as a sports writer, you often do that. You'll write a lead thinking, if the game goes this way,
Right.
here's right. So,
Yeah, if you're on,
but perhaps not about a president of the United States.
The two screens, and you're right. However, something else happened. I mean, it's
So that's interesting with Kareem. He's a very intellectual person.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an author, had a column in the Register, for a while. And very thoughtful. Is that the exception, or are there a lot of athletes out there who are smart, intelligent, thoughtful, reflective people?
I think there are a lot. I think the difference was that Kareem had such a stature, and especially as he grew older, that he felt freer about expressing those things. I think when he was younger, he was a little bit more reticent about it because it was, people didn't expect him to have, or any athlete, to have those type of societal views. And so he was a little gun-shy about his relationship with the media. It was a little testy. As he grew older and he saw the big picture, when I came out in '87, he was in the last 2 years of his career. And I remember dealing with him and thinking, wow, this guy is not only has a lot to offer, but he's a really friendly and good guy, which was not the image that was presented. I know that's a shock that we would actually present something that wasn't true, but and I always enjoyed dealing with him and still do whenever I see him. I mean, he really is a special guy. I think he was a tremendously, believe it or not, underrated basketball player. I mean, when they talk about the players of all time, sometimes he doesn't get mentioned. And he was, to me, I put him at the top of the list.
I thought his big social breakthrough was when he was the pilot in Airplane next to Peter Graves.
That loosened up a lot of people's thoughts about him because they'd never seen him cracking jokes before, and it was a big deal, actually.
Right. All right, favorite story. How about your favorite athlete or personality that you've covered?
I think probably the most unforgettable, I mean, I've got a lot of favorite athletes. I remember, I always enjoyed dealing with Tim Salmon during his Angel career because he was such a classy guy, and Teemu Selanne as well, just such a effervescent personality and great player. I think the most interesting person I was ever around was Pete Rose. I covered him in Philadelphia in 1979 and 80 when he first got there, and got to see him on an everyday basis and see him off the field, see him on the field, and he had such a tremendous understanding of the game and how to present himself, how to deal with us, how to deal with fans, and the dedication to playing.
He was still a player back then for the Phillies, so he hadn't become a manager yet.
No, he was. And they won their first World Series.
Do you think he was gambling back then?
I don't think he was gambling on baseball. I know he was gambling on college basketball and everything else, but he was. Every day he had some story. You could go to him with almost anything, and he would come up with something. And he just was very appreciative and very understanding of the whole process. And that was on the field. Now, when he crossed the lines, his life was kind of a train wreck otherwise. But on the field and in the clubhouse, he was really special.
So should he be in the Hall of Fame?
I think so because, first of all, let's deal with what he did as a player. I mean, he has more hits than anyone else who ever played. He won championships. He played many different positions. I mean, I don't think you have to make the case for him on the field. He did violate one of the sacred rules in baseball, and for that reason, I agree that he shouldn't be involved in baseball in an official sense, although he does broadcasting during the World Series, so it's kind of blurred the lines there. But I think if you go to Cooperstown and you take your kid and you look around and you see a lot of players there who didn't do half the things that Pete Rose did. And it is the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Sainthood. It's not the Hall of Virtue. It's the Hall of Fame, and I think he definitely belongs there.
Yeah, and you have a vote in that, right? You're a member of the Baseball Writers.
But he's never on the ballot, so no one can vote for him.
And you can't write him in, or
No.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
that was one of the legacies of Bud Selig, and the new commissioner, Rob Manfred, has not moved on that.
So how do you feel about the whole steroid thing with Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens?
Well, we're not. At least I don't believe that. It's a matter of our votes are private. At least I feel that way. Next year, all of them are going to be publicized. But I feel that there are different shades of that. I mean, there's some players where steroids probably did enhance their performance to a great degree. And a lot of those players could only maintain it for a couple of years, and then they slid off to where they were before. I think if you look at Barry Bonds' career, before the time that we're told that he started using. Remember, we still don't know. I mean, we can guess. It's circumstantial, but he won MVP. I think he won 3 MVP awards before
so
that.
He was a Hall of Famer before he
was
ever
on track.
started.
He was on track
allegedly
to be a
taking steroids.
He was on track to be a Hall of Famer, and then the story goes he decided he was going to try to be a home run hitter because he had seen the adulation that Mark McGwire had for it, and so he revamped his body and did all that and became the greatest home run hitter. I think if you go back and look at 2001, 2002, his on-base percentage, his batting average. He won a batting championship back then. A lot of people took steroids, but no one did anything close to what Barry Bonds did. And again, I think the support for him is growing among the membership of the Ball Writers Association. And there's a lot of people that think he is going to get in before his 10 years are up. I certainly hope so, because again, if you go to Cooperstown, you're going to look for the people that had the biggest impact on the game. And he certainly is one of them.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little, bringing home local a little more. Angels Anaheim. Okay. There's these negotiations going on now. The Angels have an opt-out clause. I think they've still got a year or two that they could move out. And there's been a lot of wrangling as to how to work the finances between the city and the Angels. Do you think they're going to come to a resolution?
I don't know, and it's been kind of quiet because they went and explored the Tustin option and found that wasn't viable. So now that last year they started talking to Anaheim again. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where they would move. I mean, they obviously are going to have to be in this market because that's where their TV contract is. And there are no other real viable markets for them to go to. So it's going to have to be somewhere in LA. They're going to have to convince somebody to build them a stadium, which is hard to do. And even though they're not pleased with the upkeep of the structure of their stadium, which has been around since the mid-'60s, they redid the stadium for baseball in 1997, and the city had a lot to do with that. And obviously, the people here like going there. They drew 3 million last year and had a team that was never in contention. So I think at some point they're going to have to resolve that's the place to go. It's just a matter of whether they can find common ground, because I really don't think there's a plan B that's viable unless they can convince a community to partner with them somewhere else in the area. And they have a long-standing 50-plus year fan base in Orange County, Riverside County, and parts of LA County. And so I think that's essentially they're going to end up playing in Anaheim somewhere. Might as well be in this stadium.
Is Artie Moreno, owner of the Angels, the type of guy that will make his decision, do you think, based on the numbers, on what makes sense, or could personality get involved? Like, I don't like the way you guys have treated me, and I'm going to spite you. I'm going to do something else.
Well, he has that element to him, but I think he's a bottom-line businessman at heart, and I think he'll do whatever is best for him. I mean, he has done, he's presented a pretty good product for the most part. He's invested in the players. He's probably invested too much in some players, like Josh Hamilton, which didn't work out very well. And I think he wants to win. He doesn't like, being on page 6 every day while the Dodgers are on page 1. And he doesn't like having a team that's not in contention. But I think he will eventually choose the path that's going to help them win the most and is the path of least resistance. And I think eventually it'll be some solution in Anaheim.
Okay. We've got an NFL football team back. The Rams are back. Have they kind of fumbled this season?
Oh, they've
to use a sports analogy.
They fumbled it and threw a pick 6. I mean, it's amazing. They had tremendous momentum when they came. Their training camp at UCI, they had big crowds. Everybody was excited. All these Ram fans from pre-1994 were coming out here and out of the woodwork. And they have not only been bad, which is one thing in the LA market, but they've been boring, which is unforgivable in the LA market. And they fired their coach. Now they're going to try to get a new coach and probably a new general manager. It's amazing. I think they have their last 2 games are Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. And I don't know what the crowds are going to be like, especially for those 2 games, because they're way out of it. And I think that people have soured on them very quickly. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't recoup, because they have a new stadium building coming up in 2019, which is going to have its own excitement. But right now, it's been pretty much of a disaster.
Have you talked with Stan Kroenke at all, the owner?
I don't think anybody has really. He kind of flies in here for the games and hasn't really talked very much to the media at all. But you know, they're pursuing the stadium. They were involved in the long game here.
Yeah.
They're not going to let one bad season kind of deter them. I don't think they wanted to fire Jeff Fisher, but after that game against Atlanta at home, I think it was pretty unavoidable.
Yeah. We may, despite the misfire that the Rams have had so far, there's talk we might get yet another team in Los Angeles in the LA market, and that's the San Diego Chargers. As we speak, that process is going on. Will the Chargers stay? Will they come to LA? What's your sense of that?
Well, the Chargers lost a stadium ballot measure on Election Day by a lot. People there are kind of fed up with them. People in San Diego, generally speaking, have not really been too keen on big capital projects, and so they have not been able to find agreement to build a stadium. There have been many plans. They've gone through many mayors. They've gone through a lot there, and I think there's just a general fatigue there among people in San Diego. I think people in San Diego are finally realizing that the team they got in 1961 and their first and most beloved team is probably going to leave, and I think they've kind of come to terms with that. They don't really have much of a plan B there either, because if they come to Los Angeles, they'll be the second team. They'll be the tenant in the new stadium. They will always be looked that way unless they are a lot better than the Rams. The Rams had a ready...
And they are one of the few NFL teams that really can't make that claim.
Well,
right
they are
now,
a little. I think they've won 5, and the Rams have won 4 at this point. But and they are more. I mean, they've got a really good quarterback. They've got some exciting things going for their team, but I just don't think that they're going to be embraced when they come here the way the Rams were. I think it's going to be kind of like been here, done that among the fans. And meanwhile, the Raiders, who have done nothing in Oakland to get a new stadium, and everything has been very inactive there for years. They're probably going to move to Las Vegas in a new dome with a really good team. Yeah. And they'll be laughing at everybody. They'll be the big winners in this.
You know, in a way, San Diego, it was like the premier franchise of the old American Football League, an exciting team in a big league city. You know, I mean, what's the problem? I'm just puzzled. As you say, I think, isn't it better to be the big kahuna in San Diego than the number 2 in LA?
Well, I think if Dean Spanos had really wanted to move, he would have moved by now, because it's been very frustrating trying to get a new stadium there. Mm-hmm. And Qualcomm got old in a hurry. I mean, everyone else is building these big palaces, getting a lot more revenue from those stadiums than the Chargers are from Qualcomm. I don't think he wants to move. I think he realizes that San Diego is their home, but nothing has happened. Yeah. And you can't continue to come back to Qualcomm on a year-to-year basis and continue to get the support from the community. I think they were hoping the Chargers would have a big year and therefore would get some excitement going on the ballot, but that didn't happen.
Is San Diego, you think, in that regard, their failure to build a stadium, are they the exception, or are they maybe the beginning of a new trend where cities used to pour out hundreds of millions of dollars for sports teams, and now a lot of them are saying, you know what, it's really not worth it. It doesn't generate that much in economic activity and so forth. We have potholes we need to fill. We just can't do that anymore. Do you see that as a trend?
I don't think so, because most places find a way to get something built, whether it's through personal seat licenses, which is the most popular way to do it these days, where you kind of put the burden on the fan. I don't think the measure in San Diego would have burdened the taxpayers very much. I just think San Diego is one of those towns where it's difficult for anything to really progress. You know, you talk about potholes, they've got measures down there where they've had trouble with infrastructure measures. Someone who's lived there all his life said we've got the 8th largest city in the country and we've got 1 runway at the airport. You know, so San Diego is there's a lot of veterans, a lot of elderly, a lot of retired, and a lot of people who, generally speaking, even though they built a baseball stadium that's very nice, there's a lot of reluctance to invest in that type of thing.
Okay, the Olympics. LA is making a bid for the 2024 Olympics. How would you handicap that?
I would think good, because they don't have to build anything. You know, they have to. I think they're going to. The last I heard, they were going to build some sort of an aquatic center where the old sports arena is or was. But otherwise, they have some. By then, they'll have the football stadium, and they can have either track and field or the opening ceremonies there, or both. Staples is here, where it wasn't here in 1984. Galen Center is here. It wasn't there in 1984. The StubHub facilities have been built since then. So I think the biggest, when you have facilities and transportation, you've kind of conquered the two biggest problems in the Olympics. And I think that there are plans to radically improve the metro system, which would really help. And I remember in 1984, I came out here for that Olympics, and Peter Ueberroth had scared so many people in Los Angeles about how awful it was going to be that they all left. And for 3 weeks, it was like paradise. There was no traffic. You could go anywhere you wanted to. And a lot of people came to LA and said, wow, this is a great place to live. And then on the Monday morning after the Olympics, you had millions of cars coming back into town, and it was chaos again. But if I'm voting for it, I can't imagine why they would get a lot of opposition, because they have the infrastructure here, and it's an international city. It's a city that can handle it.
Now, Paris is one of the. Who are the competitors?
I think Paris is the main one. I think Paris is their main opposition, and it's hard to vote against them too.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is a political situation and everything. But I do think that I think the people who are working on it, Janet Evans and the others that are working on the Olympics, are pretty optimistic.
Yeah, of course, they have a $5 billion budget is their planned budget. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, people hear that, they think, oh boy, are we going to lose our shirts? Because many, not the Ueberroth Olympics in '84, no. That was the success, but most cities lose a lot of money when they host an Olympics.
Yeah, one of the real sad things is when you look on the internet and you see the stadiums that they used in Athens in 2004 that are basically just standing there rotting now. You know, they're not being used for anything. It will be a big expenditure, but I think that they have been through this before. They've had Olympic presentations before and haven't gotten the U.S. support. I think it makes, if any Olympics can make sense, right, which is a question, I think it would make sense to have it here.
Tom, we should say you are a sports columnist for Southern California News Group, which is a collection of papers, including most notably, I think, the Orange County Register, the LA Daily News, Pasadena Star Tribune.
Star News.
What?
Star News.
The Star News, Long Beach Press Telegram, and the Daily Breeze.
Right. San Gabriel Valley and Redlands, and I mean, there's a lot. I don't think I can name them all.
Press Enterprise.
Yeah, they're affiliated with the Register.
Right. And so anyway, it was, and for years and years, for many years, you were a columnist in the Register. Then you suddenly disappeared for about a year and a half. Explain that.
I was here in 1987, and in June of 2014, when there was a little turbulence here at the Register, they offered buyouts, and I think 80 people or so took them, including me. And at that point, I freelanced for a while, and then I got basically the same job at the LA Daily News and the LA News Group, which is most of those papers that you just mentioned. And that was in September of 2014. In March of this year, 2016, Lang, L-A-N-G, bought Freedom, which was the parent company of the Register and the Press Enterprise, and formed Southern California News Group. I know it's not a catchy
it's not.
But it's CNG. I don't know what you call it.
And so you reappeared in the pages because the paper that you had moved to became part again, or was acquired the Register.
I was just magically back. So I don't even think most people probably thought I was just on vacation for a while.
And people hear about, excuse me. People hear about all the problems that journalists are having these days, newspapers are having. But you now, did you get a lump sum payment, or you got a pension, or what? How does that work?
It was a buyout that was paid out over a certain number of months.
So you actually made out pretty well on the whole thing.
Well, I mean, it was one of those things where I wasn't sure what the next buyout would be, or if I would even be involved, because things were pretty dire at that time, and we were told that If people didn't take the buyout, there was no guarantee they were going to be working, and they did lay off some
Yeah.
people after that. But you know, those were very uncertain days at the Register until they were bought by the
Right.
this company, because you know, for a long time and really throughout 2014, they had to make a lot of sacrifices.
You and I are both dinosaurs in some sense. We both started in 1974. I started in a little paper in Ohio. You were in North Carolina. Business has changed a lot.
Business has changed radically, and it's been stressful. The newspaper business as a whole didn't really react to the coming of the internet very well. Didn't really foresee the things that would happen. Didn't foresee that they'd lose their classified ad base to Craigslist and other firms. Didn't really adjust that well to the changing dynamic. And all newspapers have their own websites. The challenge has been, how do you get those websites to produce revenue for you, and do the ads resonate
And
on
we
that?
continue to struggle with that. And
Yeah.
Tom, we're out of time. Thanks very much. Great. Keep up the good work. I look at you every day over a cup of coffee. So
Great. Well,
take
thank
care.
you.
That's it for now. Thanks again to my guest, Mark Whicker. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreif.com. You can also catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Memorial Care is transforming the way healthcare is delivered, keeping our communities and businesses healthy by guiding them on the path to wellness with easily accessible hospitals, physician offices, and outpatient centers. Memorial Care, leading the way.